Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Amanda Kramer, and I am the Alumni Engagement Program Manager at the University of Colorado Boulder's Leeds School of Business. These are certainly trying times, and here at CU Boulder, we have gathered our world-renowned faculty and alumni to provide frank and timely insights for life during and after the COVID-19 pandemic. Today is the fifth of 8 webinars in this COVID-19 related webinar series. To view upcoming webinars, please visit our website at colorado.edu/business/alumni. Click the drop-down arrow and click Attend Online Webinars. For today's webinar, we're excited to have CU alumnus and senior career consultant Alan Arney here presenting on job searching during COVID-19. A few housekeeping items before we begin. First, if you have any questions now or during the presentation that you would like to ask Alan, please send a question through the chat interface. We will monitor questions as they are submitted, and Alan will respond to them at the end of the presentation. As a reminder, for optimum audio quality, we do have everyone on mute except for myself and our speaker. If you experience any technical difficulties during the webinar, please notify us through the chat interface, and one of our support specialists will touch base. Lastly, a link to access the webinar recording will be sent to all registrants tomorrow, along with a survey link and supplemental resources from today's presentation. Now, I am so excited to introduce today's speaker. Alan Arney is a senior career consultant in the Denver office of Hecht Harrison, where he coaches senior corporate executives going through career transition. Alan previously served as Vice President of Global Learning and Development at Western Union, where he was responsible for managing the development and delivery of learning programs to Western Union's 8,500 employees. Prior to Western Union, Alan was a director in the Denver office of Accenture and worked for the company for 21 years. At Accenture, Alan worked with global and domestic companies to deliver management consulting and business process outsourcing services. Alan has also served on the board of the Leeds School of Business from 2012 to 2019 and previously served on the board of the Boy Scouts of America, Denver Area Council, and the YMCA of Southwest Denver. Welcome, Alan, and thank you so much for being here. I'm going to hand the webinar controls over to you now.
Thank you, Amanda, and good afternoon, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be with you today and talk about something that's very important in the world today, and it's something that I do on a daily basis in working with senior executives who are going through career transition. Before I begin my presentation, I just want to give a shout out to Dean Sharon Matusik of the Leeds School of Business. I've had the fortune of knowing Dean Matusik for 9 years before she became the dean, and have just watched her really do an exceptional job in leading the Leeds School and transforming the school into what is now one of the top 20 public business schools in the country. Dean Matusik has done a fantastic job, and I was fortunate to work with her as a board member for 7 years. I also want to just recognize Tricia McKean, the Assistant Dean of Advancement for the Leeds School of Business, and also Heather Hansen, who's the Senior Director of Engagement, and Amanda Kramer, who is our Alumni Engagement Program Manager. I've been fortunate to work with these ladies for a long time, and they do a terrific job in not only doing their day job, but also supporting board members and many of the very important initiatives that the Leeds School undertakes every year. And this is a great example of one of those initiatives. So with that, I have some prepared remarks that I'm going to talk to you about. And then we have a number of questions that have been submitted. And I understand that our demographic for the audience today includes current Leeds students, recent Leeds graduates or soon to be graduates, and also Leeds alumni, and there may also be alumni from CU, so we're very happy to have you join. And I encourage all of you, if you're associated with the Leeds School, Career Services, the Career Connect team within Leeds is a great asset and resource, and also Career Services at the C4C for CU graduates and alumni. Please know that that's a lifetime benefit that you receive. So if you need additional help, perhaps in your job search or getting ready for a job, contact either one of those organizations to help you. So today I'm gonna just quickly talk about my story. It's very relevant as I came out of the University of Colorado at Boulder, graduating in 1985 with my undergraduate degree in political science. It was a very challenging time, and so I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And then I'm going to talk about telling your story. It is very important that at every stage of your career, whether you're entering your career or you've been in a career for many years, you need to be able to tell your story and talk about important things that employers want to hear about from you. I am all about project management, and I've used the term for many years, way back to my second engagement at Accenture in 1992. I learned the term plan the work and work the plan. And it's a great way to structure your job search in those terms. I want to share some lessons that I've learned from other people as they've gone through job search. And then I'm going to finish up by talking a little bit about some of the things that you need to be aware of during the COVID-19 crisis. And then finally, I'm going to talk about celebrating your success. And that's something that a lot of people don't do when they land a job. And it's important that you do that before you step into a new role. So that's our agenda for today. And I'm going to dive right in. And then we have many questions prepared at the end. So let's talk about a little bit about job search. Job search is undoubtedly the toughest job you will ever have. It takes a lot of preparation to complete a successful job search. You really have to do your homework. A lot of research on the front end is required and necessary for you to be successful. It's also important to pay attention to signals that are coming from news channels and different sources that are out there that are actually great tips in telling you where to look for your next role and employers that are hiring right now. It is also about being in the right place at the right time and being able to tell your story. And with that, I just want to tell you that my very first role actually began as a summer job in the summer of 1983. I had just finished my sophomore year at the University of Colorado at Boulder. I was working my way through school. It was a classmate of mine that said, "Hey, do you need a summer job?" And I said, "Why, yes, I do." And little did I know that that was actually going to pay $12 an hour, which was a lot of money in 1983. Well, I ended up staying with that summer job and then working part-time through my junior and senior years. And then when I graduated from CU in 1985, I just rolled right into a full-time job upon graduation. And it was that job that actually launched my career. And there were a lot of skills that I learned then that I use today and will use every day. Things like paying attention to details, managing two timelines, multitasking and doing many different things, and interacting with senior executives who were my boss or my boss's boss. And so it was the skills that I gained then that I have used over the course of every role that I've had throughout my 35-year career since I graduated from CU. I also want to tell you, be prepared to talk about what you're doing and the value that you're delivering. You want to be able to talk about that every day. And also, I want you to focus on the skills that you are building, because those skills can be very useful and relevant to an interview that you may have 20 years from now when you're applying for a job that is asking you to talk about your skills and what you bring to the table. And it's being prepared to talk about your story that is very important. Now, the reality is that my story goes on. I could talk about the last 35 years and doing things like managing consulting projects in Asia, Africa, Europe, and all over the US. I've had the fortune to work around the world. I could also talk about the various levels of senior executives that I've worked with, whether they be the CEO of a sporting goods retailer headquartered in Inglewood, Colorado, or the president of a country in East Africa. Learning those skills and abilities to effectively interact with, and communicate with senior executives is a skill that I had the fortune of learning and practicing early on in my career, and I've used since then. One thing that I also want to mention as it relates to my story, I didn't tell you what I did, but I actually worked in the foreclosure department of 100-year-old savings and loan in Colorado. Just this past weekend, I watched a story on television. It was an interview with the retired chairman and CEO of British Petroleum. And he talked about the fact that in 1985, we haven't seen oil prices depressed like we do today since 1985. It was a very challenging time to be graduating from CU. A lot of my classmates really struggled to find a role. I actually was working in a role that is probably the busiest I've ever been in my life. And so later on, I want to talk about companies and industries that are doing a lot of hiring today. And if you find yourself in job search, whether it be as a new entrant or someone who is later on in your career, I encourage you to look at some of the industries that are hiring today, because they could be a great place for you to land if you have been displaced by the COVID virus. So let's talk for a few minutes about, I want to talk about new hires or recent graduates from CU entering the workplace, and then we'll talk about experienced hires. I want you to really think about what you have learned over the course of your time at CU and while in college. There are a lot of skills that you've developed that are very important that you need to be prepared to talk about when you interview. Skills like research and homework and working in project teams and developing interests in different areas. As you approach the work world, it's more than just talking about your degree and your GPA. You really need to focus on what are the skills that you've developed that are transferable to or would be used in a job. A lot of companies look for analysts and employees to do analytics and study numbers and information, and then decipher what that information needs. So in developing those skills, it's important to be able to talk about the different things that you've learned over the course of your undergraduate study. It's also important to be able to talk about why you're applying to a particular company. I led recruiting at CU for Accenture for more than a decade. And it was always interesting to me that students would talk about, well, I really enjoy working with people, and that's why I want to work at Accenture. Well, unfortunately, that wasn't enough to get them hired. It's really important that you research and study companies that you're interested in, and then talk about why you're interested in those. They may be an industry leader. They may be poised for growth and great career opportunities for someone that's just starting out. Or they may be on Colorado's best places to work list. There are a lot of things that you should learn about a company before you approach someone or before you apply for a job. The more you know and the more time you invest in that company, the better it's going to show your keen and genuine interest in that company, and significantly increase the chances that you will be hired. And also think about where you're going to be in 5 years. That's an important question that often gets asked in interviews, is where do you want to go? What do you want to do? Do you want to stay with the same company and grow? Do you want to gain skills maybe in a particular job and learn as much as you can and then move on to another company? So you need to think about and be able to articulate Where do you see yourself going in 5 years? And so all of this is a way of saying preparation is so important as you get ready to apply to a company. And then once you get to a company, I'll talk more about what you do once you get there. And finally, I want you to put the power of your diploma to use. You may not be able to find a job in your exact interest or field right now. It's important to just get into the work world and start developing skills. If you put into context a career which may run 35 or 40 or 45 years, I'm now working with senior executives who are going to be the first generation of Americans who will work into their 70s. And they do that because they can and because they want to. But if you think about in the big scheme of a 40 or 45-year career, there's lots of time there to navigate into a place where or a field that you're interested in. And at this stage, just take the opportunity to get hired and then learn everything you can, because those skills may be very transferable and relatable in the future. Turning our attention to experienced hires, I will say that it all comes down to two things. It's about value. It's about the value that you have delivered, the value that you can deliver, and it's the value that you will deliver day one on a new job. That is what's going to get you hired. Your ability to talk about the value that you have contributed to the organizations where you have worked is critical to successful job search right now. And so I want you to think about that and put value in terms of quantitative and qualitative measures of success. Now, those can be very objective. They may be very subjective, but it's up to you to be able to tell your story about the value that you've contributed, because past value is absolutely a sign of future value that you can contribute to an organization. Now, during the COVID virus, you have great opportunities while you're working from home to develop and update your LinkedIn profile and your resume. If you've been in job search for some time now, I want you to think about perhaps changing or editing or adding to both your resume and your LinkedIn profile. Both of those deliverables are imperative in job search today, because your resume is a necessary evil. A company is typically going to ask, well, do you have a resume? Or could you send me your resume? Or maybe it's someone that's referring you or introducing you to someone, they're going to ask for your resume. Your resume is going to set the stage for selling you and the value that you bring to a new company. So I encourage you to take a critical eye to your resume. If it hasn't worked up to now, think about changes or things that you can add to it that may help you in the future. As well as your LinkedIn profile, make sure that you have a professional picture. Make sure that you've done a nice job of rounding out the skills that you have gained in the summary at the top. And then for each of your roles, make sure that you're giving enough of a description such that the reader understands the different things that you have done throughout your career. And hopefully they will see a nice upward progression of titles that you've held, responsibilities that you've had, and the accountabilities that you've gained throughout your career. Think about the skills that you have and how they match to a job description. It's important that whether it be an automated tracking system that is scanning a resume or a company that's paying someone to review resumes, They're just looking at your resume against a job description. And the more you can use the words that are in a job description, the more that you can translate your experience into language that that company and that screener understands. That's what's going to get you to the next level and get you to actually speak to someone to talk about your value. So think about how your skills match to what a company is asking for. And again, I'm going to talk about this just once more. When you think about the quantitative and qualitative measures of your success, whether they be percentages or dollar signs or numbers, or maybe it's even morale that you've improved by a team stepping in and giving them your style of leadership. Those are things that companies want to hear about because they demonstrate what you can do in an organization. So whether it's hard dollars that you can say that I increase sales by this much, I improve the company's margin by this percentage, or maybe I reduce the spend by vendors by this much. All of that adds up to the value that you can deliver. So it's important that you think about that as you approach a job search as an experienced hire. So I use that term, plan the work and work the plan. I want you to think about your job search like a project, and I want you to create a plan and a strategy for your search. Actually go to the effort and rigor of developing a project plan, including the scope, the schedule, and the budget. And I add budget because there are things that you can and should invest in to help you in your job search. I am a big proponent of the Denver Business Journal. I have an annual subscription, and every day I look at the headlines to see about companies that are coming to Colorado. There was an article about a month ago about a company called Pax8 that plans to hire 1,800 people in Denver in 2020. Now, that was before the COVID virus hit and we were all subject to a lockdown. But Pax8 continues to collect applications and conduct interviews for the future. I referred a student from Coastal Carolina University in Conway, South Carolina, to Pax8. And he actually got a call back the day after he submitted his application. So I encourage you all to take a look at the Denver Business Journal and see what it has to say. Also, you might want to invest in a LinkedIn profile, a premium profile, which gives you the ability to send in-mail to people that you may want to network with, or you may want to get introduced to, or introduce yourself to. That can be a key investment, especially as an experienced hire, in looking to see who's looking at your LinkedIn profile. There may be recruiters that see something in your profile that they're interested in talking to you about. So you might want to invest in that. And also things like conference attendance. There are many dinners that happen throughout the course of the year to recognize industry leaders, companies that have done exceptional things. Those could be great investments that you should consider making that would enable you to expand your network or get exposure to companies that are out there doing great things that you may want to go to work for. Also, if you're interested in startups, which a lot of people are, I encourage you to look at resources like the Colorado Companies to Watch. And another resource is Built in Colorado. These are programs that spotlight startup companies that are successful. They have a viable product or service that they have launched into the marketplace. Many of those companies are starting to fill in their C-suite of leaders and the next level of leadership. They're also looking to hire many people into the various departments that are going to run their business. These are the companies that are the growth engine of Colorado's economy. So I encourage you, go back and look at the winners of the Colorado companies to watch for 2015, 16, 17, 18, 19, and in June, the 2020 winners will be announced. These are great companies, many of which you've never heard of, and they are not all marijuana companies. Take a look at those companies and see if maybe there's something that might be of interest to you, and then learn everything you can about them. If you're looking at large companies, maybe it's firms with the most CPAs. Maybe it's a company like Lockheed Martin that announced in the Denver Business Journal this past weekend that they are going to hire 700 people in Colorado in the coming year for a large NASA and DoD contract that they have just been awarded. It's companies like that that I encourage you to pay attention to, because whether you're entering the work world for the first time, or maybe you're in the middle of your career, or maybe you're a senior leader, when you start hiring 700 people, those companies need leaders to manage those teams and manage the individuals that are coming into their organizations. So pay attention to companies that are hiring, whether they be startups or whether they be large companies. And then I want you also to look at using recruiters and your network to get your word out. There are many, many other resources that are available to you that can help you and advance your job search, in addition to you simply applying to a company. For new hires, again, use the power of your diploma. You've just graduated from college. That means something, and now it's time to go out into the work world. And for experienced hires, you want to make yourself the best choice. And one of the ways that you make yourself the best choice is to be prepared to talk about the value that you deliver. So planning the work is very important. Now let's talk about working the plan. So job search is a full-time role. The average job seeker puts about 5 hours a week into their job search. That does not cut it. It requires full-time effort by you every day to land a new role. I assure you, the more effort you put into it, the faster you're going to land a role. And the more rigor you put into your plan, the more you're going to land or increase the chances of landing the right role. So do your homework and use the resources around you. Be prepared and be resilient throughout your search. Job search is a tireless effort. It takes a lot of attention, and you always want to bring your A game. If you get tired or discouraged in your job search, that's going to be seen by future employers. They would much rather hire someone who is energetic and flexible in terms of what they're looking for, where they want to work, or what they want to do. So resilience is an important thing to focus on throughout your career. Build your network and use it to your advantage. Again, my first job came from a classmate of mine at CU. Now, I ended up going into business and working in the largest global management consulting firm in the world, Accenture. He actually went to the US Department of Defense and today is the senior most US civilian employee for the Department of Defense on the European continent. We've had very divergent careers, but it all began by both of us taking a job in the foreclosure department of a savings and loan. So building your network and using it to your advantage is critical. I've actually called on that friend in the past to be a reference for me in jobs that I've taken 20 and 30 years later in my career. So building your network is something that I encourage all of you to do, whether you're just graduating from CU or if you've been in the work world for some time, because a network can be definitely taken advantage of and used to your advantage, taken advantage of by you to help you. If you're a new hire, look at job boards, use company announcements and LinkedIn. Look at companies that are hiring. They may be in a growth spurt and there may be opportunities for you. When a company announces that they're going to lease 280,000 square feet of office space in the Denver Tech Center, and this happens to be an Australian fintech company that has decided to choose Colorado and the Denver Tech Center is their US headquarters, I pay attention to that because 280,000 square feet, you can pack a lot of people into a space that size. Now, that company strategy may change based on COVID, but take the opportunity to pay attention to what companies are saying in the news. And experienced hires, use your network because the chances are that 95% of you will land your next role via word of mouth. So lessons from the past, I'll touch on these quickly and then we'll get to questions. Be patient. It definitely takes time to land a new role. Now, I've actually seen 10 executives land new roles in the last 3 weeks, and that's very exciting. And they've all landed their roles. Some of them landed them very quickly. Others, it took time for them to find the next opportunity where they would be hired. So the lesson is be patient and don't get discouraged. People absolutely want to help you, but just understand that those people that you're calling on may be dealing with a friend or loved one that has contracted the virus. They may be dealing with homeschooling. They may have a lot going on, and they may just not know about an opportunity for you that they could refer you to at this time. But people want to help, but don't get down if they don't get back to you right away. It's important to keep track of everywhere that you've applied and who you've talked to. I know people that have been contacted 3, 4, 6 months after they first spoke with someone at a company. They can't remember the name, they can't remember what the company does or who the person is. So it's important to keep track of where you've applied and who you've spoken to. And absolutely keep yourself sharp. And if you need a pep talk by someone, ask them. Go to a trusted friend and say, hey, I need some help here. I need an energy boost. You know how to talk to me. And so give me that pep talk that's going to enable me to stay in the game and complete a successful search. A couple of things to think about while we're in the COVID crisis. The first is, as I said, do your homework and take advantage of this time to research companies. Look at their internet sites, look at executive bios, look at SEC filings, and take a look at competitors of those companies and what they're doing. Again, doing your homework will pay off. Consider whether or not you need to change your strategy. If you've been going at a sharpshooter approach where you've targeted just a few companies, it may be time to expand or broaden your search. So I want you to think about that. Again, respect those that you're trying to network with, and I've already talked about things that those people may be dealing with. Paying attention to news stories and available resources. There are all kinds of good news out there about companies, including places like Amazon and mortgage companies that are doing lots of refinances right now. If you want a job today, you could probably go get hired by a mortgage company or a title company based on the sheer volume of refinances that they're trying to handle based on low interest rates. And take advantage right now to connect with others just to say hello and remind them that you value your relationship and let them know that you're in job search. And then finally, The last thing I want you to think about is before you step into your next role, I want you to remember the people that helped you, and I want you to say thank you to them. Add them to your network and make sure that you stay in touch with them. Let them know how it's going and let them know how much you appreciated their help. Thank the hiring manager for choosing you, because the reality is it's a very highly competitive job market right now. So say thanks to them for choosing you for that role. Remember what worked in your search and what you would do next time. Take advantage to look at the lessons that you learned and that others tell you about that they've learned in their successful job search. Network everywhere you can, including telling your network where you've landed so that they know where to get in touch with you. And pat yourself on the back. Your jobs will come. It's just a matter of time. It's not a question of if, it's just a matter of when. So I hope that these tips have been beneficial to you, and I'm happy to take your questions now.
Great, thank you, Alan. As a reminder, please feel free to submit your questions via the Q&A or chat features. We have a lot of great questions coming in. Let's start with a question from Jim. What does networking look like in the world of social distancing?
So great question. I encourage people to seek out and find first people that they know, people who are friends, people who are neighbors of theirs. Take advantage of thinking about people that you know and starting to build from there. And then asking people you know if they can refer you to someone. I think it's a good idea to keep a list of companies that you're interested in. And then I ask people, would you happen to know someone that works there? Or would you happen to know something about that company or that entity? Maybe it's a county government office or a state government agency. Build your network based on the people that you know and then growing it out from there. And you can and should be able to effectively network during the COVID virus.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. Now, you've mentioned the mortgage industry and a couple of companies hiring. Are there other industries that you feel are a good bet for job opportunities, during and after the pandemic?
There are. Mm-hmm. Yes, there are. So the mortgage industry is certainly one that is high right now because of the low interest rate environment that we're in. Small business lending is a booming industry right now, and whether it's large retail banks or specialty financial services companies that lend to small businesses, they're all looking for people right now. I mentioned logistics companies. Amazon is hiring. I know that with the fulfillment centers that there's one in Thornton and another one in Aurora, Amazon is still continuing to look for large numbers of people in Colorado. And built in Colorado and the Colorado companies to watch, I would absolutely pay attention to the companies on both of those lists. Aerospace, I mentioned Lockheed Martin, excuse me. And then finally, fintech. There are a number of startup fintech companies, both in Boulder and in the Denver area, where many people who previously worked at large investment banking institutions are going. And I mentioned the Australian company that Computershare, I think their name is, that there was a large write-up in the Denver Business Journal about that company. So those are just a few of the industries that I would encourage you to take a look at.
Great, thank you, Alan. That is so helpful. Next, we have a question from Steve. How does a job applicant get noticed in the flood of email everyone is getting?
Hi, Steve. I want you to take a risk. And I want you to send a polished, concise cover letter and resume to the senior most person in that organization that has responsibility over the area in which you're looking to work. And it's often those that take risks and you'd be surprised what a written letter mailed to an executive will do in terms of getting a response. You significantly increase your chances of hearing back from that company when you submit a polished professional cover letter and resume.
Great, thank you. Next, we have a question from Leslie. What is the best way to follow up when everything is delayed and uncertain?
Hi, Leslie. I think it's important to first keep track of everywhere where you have applied or submitted a resume. And then what I encourage people to do is that you don't want to be a hindrance. You want to pay attention to signals that we're getting from the governor and from our counties where we live, because they are important gatekeepers in the environment in which we're operating right now. But I would encourage you to follow up. No, I wouldn't wait any longer than 3 weeks to follow up with someone, and keep it short, just reminding them who you are, the context under which you're reaching out to them, and then tell them something interesting about their company that you learned, that you saw. Maybe you read about it in their SEC filings or their annual report, or tell them something about maybe that a competitor is doing that they may not have the ability to pay attention to in their work week. So telling them something interesting shows that you're interested in their industry, in that company, and it may very well prompt them to get back to you to say, hey, I've still got your name, and keeping you at the top of our list when we do reopen to start hiring again.
Great tips there. Thank you. Next, we have a question from Sue. What do you think are the most important skills employers are looking for during this period?
Hi, Sue. I think it's a couple of things. First is the ability to manage ambiguity. There's a lot of uncertainty right now, and I think it's the ability to manage yourself through this time, this uncertain time, by staying focused and paying attention to detail. Make sure that the materials you use in your job search don't have any typographical errors or omissions in them. Make sure that you have someone proofread your application or your resume before you submit it, or a cover letter, or have someone take an eye to your LinkedIn profile and make sure that before you update your profile with changes, make sure that you have reviewed them yourself or updated them, or had given someone else the opportunity to take a look at them.
Thank you. We've got this next question from Kathleen and a couple of other people as well. What resources do you recommend to develop a project plan?
So there's a great book out there that's called The 90-Day Plan, and that actually speaks, forgive me, that talks about your first 90 days on the job. But also there's some good lessons in there about developing a project plan. There's some great available training materials on LinkedIn, and actually in the public domain. You can just do a Google search on project management or project planning. There's some great resources out there that are absolutely available and free to you. You can also look at online learning courses through the company used to be called Skillsoft. I think they've changed their name, but there are some great resources out there in the public domain that can help you develop a project plan.
Great, thank you. We're going to take 3 more questions. We're down to the final 3. The next question is from Harris. My experience is in restaurants hospitality. What advice do you have for those of us that are applying to jobs in different industries than that of our skills or experience?
So Harris, that's a great question. I do encourage you to take a look at the Denver Business Journal. It was actually last week, I think this time last week, where I saw an article about 3 CEOs of Colorado restaurant chains that were going to talk about their industry and how they were actually going to manage their restaurant chains through the COVID virus and then re-entering or re-emerging from the virus lockdown. So take a look at that. But Harris, I think it's really about identifying those skills that you've gained while in the restaurant or hospitality industry that are useful in other industries. So customer relationship and customer management and customer satisfaction. Those are 3 very important skills that many companies that are in the services industry or that provide services to companies, they are always looking for people who have those skills. It's about breaking down what you know and what you've learned and then being able to translate and explain that in such a way that you demonstrate the value that you can bring to another company. So whether it's managing a budget, managing a schedule, managing your schedule, or managing the schedule of others, or dealing with a customer who isn't satisfied and wants you to do something, or it's about adding additional items to a menu. There are many different things in just the things that I talked about. There are many different skills that you gained over the course of your time in that industry that can be very applicable to other industries. And so I always tell people, think about what you've done, break it down into logical pieces, and then be able to translate it in such a way that someone else will understand that you have the ability to step into their industry and deliver value quickly.
Really great advice. Thank you, Alan, and applicable for many people in many industries looking to make a switch. Our second to last question here from John, is ageism an issue for job seekers over 50?
John, I would say that ageism is alive and well in corporate America today. And the way that you're going to overcome that is to be you want to show up very attentive, very flexible, willing to do what a company needs and make it about the company's needs. Don't make it about you and you need your next role. Make it about that company and what does the company need and how you can meet or exceed their needs. That's how you're going to overcome it. And so again, I talked about keeping crisp and being resilient throughout your job search, whether it's physically or mentally or emotionally. I want you to think about those things that you can do that are going to enable you to bring your A game every time you're talking to a prospective employer.
Great. Thank you, Alan. And then our last question, it's a 2-part question from Brad. The first part is, as a new graduate, what is the value in trying to get my first job with a well-known brand versus a smaller or less known company? And the second part would be, is it a better option to continue searching for an entry-level job or just to apply to graduate school instead?
So Brad, these are great questions. And actually, as my wife and I, our youngest is 22 and he recently graduated from Coastal Carolina University in Conway, South Carolina, and is at home now. He's thinking about should he apply to graduate school or should he take a new role? So I tell you, both paths are great. I don't think you could go wrong with either one of those paths. Obviously, I would encourage you to think about the financial impacts of graduate school and what that would do to your personal savings and the resources that you have available to you. I think that's something that you need to consider, but it's well worth the investment. I think that graduate school is a very valuable thing to do, and having that graduate degree using the power of that graduate degree, you can absolutely advance yourself and your career. In terms of going with a well-known or a lesser-known company, at this stage, Brad, it's about developing skills. And you can do that in either path. So don't feel like you have to go to work for the largest retail bank in America to gain financial services industry skills. There's some great credit unions and community banks that are hiring right now where you can gain analytical skills and financial lending skills and financial analysis skills and financial planning and analysis skills. You can learn all those at a small institution just as well as you can at a large institution. And so I encourage you to, right now it's about getting your feet wet in taking a job or going to graduate school, either one, and just learning everything you can and take advantage of every day to learn something new and apply that in your daily life. And that's what's going to get you ahead and advance you in your career. So great questions. Thank you all very much for those.
Yes, they were great questions. And thank you, Alan, for all of your responses there. And thank you so much to everyone for joining us for today's presentation. And a special thank you again to Alan for this great information throughout this webinar. As a reminder, all webinar attendees will receive an email tomorrow with a link to the recording of this presentation. To view upcoming webinars as well as previous recordings, please visit our website at colorado.edu/business/alumni. We hope that you will join us for our next webinar, which is this Wednesday, as Dr. Courtney Welton-Mitchell of the Colorado School of Public Health shares practical strategies for supporting mental health during COVID-19. In the meantime, have a great rest of your day and go Buffs.